Welcome to Module 4. In thinking about data collection, it's important to know what type of data you'll collect. This is what we'll discuss in this module of the course. So data can be collected from a variety of sources, and it comes in two general types, qualitative and quantitative. So quantitative data is what we traditionally think about when we think about data. So numbers, percentages, things like that. It's an objective measure that can undergo numerical analysis, like adding, subtracting, running statistics, things like that. And you can remember quantitative by thinking quantitative equals quantity equals numbers. Quantitative data can be collected from tools like surveys that you give to your participants or pulled from external indices or numbers like gross domestic product or GDP, things that are calculated for entire countries, like figures from the census or the National Bureau of Statistics, or performance tests that you give before and after a particular intervention. In contrast, qualitative data helps us gain an understanding of underlying reasons that something happens. So you can remember that by thinking qualitative equals quality equals reasons. Qualitative data usually comes in the form of text or visual or audio files, and it's usually analyzed through non-numerical methods like pile sorting or coding or content analysis, and a few other approaches as well. Qualitative data is collected usually through face-to-face or in-person interactions like focus groups or interviews or site visits and observations. In general, best practice in monitoring and evaluation is to use a mix of both qualitative and quantitative methods in your data collection. Quantitative can point out general trends, while qualitative can help you dig deeper into the trends to better understand what causes them. For example, if you give a survey to your participants and find that about half of them are unsatisfied with a particular element of the program, you can then hold a focus group with some of your participants to ask more about that particular element of the program and help you understand what exactly the issue might be and what you can do to change it. So now that we've outlined different types of data and data collection tools, there are a few things you should think about as you decide how to collect your data. The following questions can help guide you as you decide on your data sources. And they're very similar to the considerations for designing good indicators, but they'll help you think specifically about the sources of data that you collect. So the first question is, how often will you collect the data? Once you've thought about what kind of data you'll collect, so qualitative or quantitative, and what the source of the data might be, so will it come from a survey or an interview, you should think about how frequently you'll collect this data. How much time do you think it'll take to see change occur as a result of whatever the element of the program is? And so if you collect data too frequently, it might mean that you're not giving enough time to see what the changes are that take place. While if you don't collect data frequently enough, that means you might miss the important changes altogether. So think about what level of effort it'll take to collect the data also, because this can factor in how often you collect it as well, depending on how much staff time you have or how difficult the data might be to collect. You also want to think about who's responsible for collecting it. Again, it's important to not only know where the data is coming from and how often, but who will be collecting it, especially if you're working with various partners in your program. Will you use your program staff, or will you use consultants, or do the staff already have capacity for data collection, or will they need training? You also want to think about how you will check to make sure that the data is accurate. This is called data triangulation. And it is of utmost importance that the data you collect is accurate, as the data will guide your program decisions and tell your funder about the progress of the program and play a really big role in accountability. So there are lots of ways that data can become inaccurate, from the way that it's collected to the way that it's recorded. And one way to make sure that the data is correct is through triangulation with other sources that may collect the same data. So for example, you might cross-check your survey results with program records about attendance to make sure that the people who are reporting about an event actually did attend it. You also want to think about what are some baseline targets for this indicator. As you think about your indicators, you should collect data for where you're starting, your baseline, and then set targets to aim for what you want to achieve. Without a baseline understanding of the situation before a program is started, it's difficult to make the case that your program actually made any change at all. And so now that we've talked about the sources for indicator data and how it'll be collected, we need to think about how we'll manage our data as well. Data management is a really important part of monitoring and evaluation systems that's often forgotten, or we think we don't have time for it. So it's important to take this into consideration. Good management will make it easier to find information that you're looking for, and it's a really key first step for making analysis go smoothly as well. So there are a few considerations for data management. The first is cleaning your data. This basically means making sure that everything is in the same format for easy analysis. For example, if you ask your respondents on a survey to estimate how many people they work with, the responses should be in numbers so that you can quickly analyze the results. But you might find that when people fill out the survey, especially if they're filling it out with pen and paper, some people might write in text, or they might give a range of how many people they work with. So you can check, or you should check through all of your responses and then make sure the data is clean by using the find replace function in Excel to remove any text and replace it with numbers so that you make sure that everything's in the same format. Once all of your data is clean, you also want to make sure that your data is stored consistently in your files, and that these files, you have long-term access to them as well. So think about the physical format that your data is in. If you have lots of pen and paper surveys, this may mean making electronic copies. If you have audio files and video files on tapes or CDs, you should make sure that they're stored in a safe space and that you have easy access and can find them and that they don't get lost. You also might want to think about a system to name and store all of your files so that you are able to access and find your data quickly and easily. I think we've all been in situations where we have a report or some other kind of document and you get the version that's like final and final and real final until you have 5 different versions of final and you're not sure which the actual final version is. So consistent storage and having a system for naming things can help mitigate that problem. In your data management system, you should also think about who has access to the data during the different parts of the collection process. So is everyone consistent in how they clean the data and store it? And if you're working with a team to collect data, it might be helpful to have a short training on how to clean, name, and store the files so that everyone's on the same page. Alternately, maybe not everyone on your team needs to have access to all of the data all the time. If that's the case, there might be options for keeping things in different files or keeping things in locked or password protected files as well. Related to that is the issue of privacy. You want to be really thoughtful about what kind of information you're keeping. I think in a lot of the programs that we work on, especially in community development, there's a lot of sensitive information around health or other factors that gets collected. So you want to think, if this data were to get out publicly, could it be used to the detriment of a participant? If so, you might think about how to limit who has access to the data. And if you're working with a program that tracks many participants, you should always use a unique identifier for each participant across all your data rather than keeping their name and an email. Unique identifiers are also very helpful because they help keep records straight, especially if you have lots of participants with the same or similar contact information. So that helps get consistent storage in addition to protecting privacy. So that concludes Module 4. You can check out the activity to learn more about data collection and management, and then continue on to Module 5.